I was 39 years old when I realized my husband had been gone for 2 years, even though he still lived in our house. The understanding came to me on a Wednesday evening in November, as I sat at our dining room table eating dinner alone while Alex worked on his laptop in the living room, 20 feet away but completely unreachable. I could see him from where I sat, the familiar curve of his shoulders, the way he unconsciously ran his hand through his hair when he was concentrating, the soft glow of his screen reflecting off his glasses. He looked exactly like the man I'd married 8 years ago, the man I'd shared breakfast with that morning, the man who'd kissed my forehead before leaving for work. But he wasn't really there, hadn't been really there for a long time. "How was your day?" I asked, the same question I'd been asking every evening for months, hoping for something more than the standard response. "Fine," he said without looking up from his screen. "Busy." Fine. Busy. The two-word summary that had become Alex's default response to any attempt at connection. I tried a different approach. I was thinking we could go see that new movie this weekend. The one with the actress you like. Maybe. I've got a lot of work to catch up on. Another standard response. Alex always had work to catch up on these days, even though he'd never been a workaholic before. Even though his job hadn't changed, his responsibilities hadn't increased, his deadlines hadn't become more demanding. The work wasn't real. It was a shield, a way to stay busy enough to avoid having to be present in our marriage. I finished my dinner in silence, washed the dishes alone, and went upstairs to read in bed while Alex continued working on whatever wasn't really work. It was our routine now. Parallel lives lived in the same house, the performance of marriage without any of its actual intimacy. That night, lying in bed next to Alex as he scrolled through his phone, I tried to remember the last time we'd had a real conversation. Not logistics about bills or schedules or whose turn it was to buy groceries, but an actual conversation about thoughts, feelings, experiences that mattered. I couldn't remember. It had been months, maybe longer. We'd somehow evolved into roommates who happened to share a mortgage and a last name. The next morning, I woke up before Alex and lay in bed watching him sleep. His face was peaceful, younger looking without the careful neutrality he wore when awake. I wanted to reach over and touch his cheek, to wake him up gently and ask him where he'd gone when he decided to stop being my husband and started just playing the role. But I knew what would happen if I tried. He'd wake up politely, smile briefly, and immediately start talking about the day's schedule. He'd kiss my forehead, the same distant, dutiful kiss he gave me every morning, and disappear into the shower, into his routine, into the careful performance of being present while remaining completely absent. Instead, I got up quietly and made coffee, standing at our kitchen window watching neighbors walk their dogs and kids wait for school buses. Normal people living normal lives, probably having normal relationships with normal problems that could be solved with normal conversations. I envied them. When Alex came downstairs, he was already dressed for work, already checking his phone, already mentally halfway out the door despite having just entered the room. "Coffee smells good," he said, pouring himself a cup. "I was thinking we could have dinner at that Italian place tonight," I said. "The one where we had our anniversary dinner last year." Alex paused with his coffee cup halfway to his lips. For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker across his face, recognition, maybe, or the ghost of the man who used to get excited about date nights. "I can't tonight," he said finally. "I've got plans with Kevin." "Oh, you didn't mention that yesterday." "Didn't I? I thought I did. We're going to catch up over beers." Kevin, Alex's college roommate who lived 3 states away and visited maybe twice a year. When had they made these plans? Why hadn't Alex mentioned them before? Why did it feel like he'd invented this social obligation on the spot to avoid having dinner with his wife? "Maybe tomorrow then," I said. "Maybe. Let me check my schedule." After Alex left for work, I sat at our kitchen table with my coffee and tried to pinpoint when this had started. When had my husband begun treating our marriage like an obligation he was fulfilling rather than a relationship he was participating in? I thought about our anniversary dinner 6 months ago, the one I'd just mentioned. Alex had been polite, attentive in the way you'd be attentive to a work colleague you needed to maintain a good relationship with. He'd asked appropriate questions, made appropriate comments, smiled at appropriate moments. But it had felt like dinner with a stranger who was performing the role of my husband. I thought about our vacation to Maine the month before that. Alex had come along physically, had participated in all the activities I'd planned, had taken photos and made pleasant conversation with other couples we met. But he'd felt absent the entire time, like his body was on vacation while his mind was somewhere else entirely. I thought about the fight we'd had 8 months ago, about his emotional distance, how I'd finally worked up the courage to tell him I felt like I was living with a ghost. How he'd listened patiently to my concerns, nodded in understanding, and promised to work on being more present. The next week, he'd brought me flowers and suggested we cook dinner together. He'd asked about my day with more interest than usual, had put his phone away during our meal, had made an effort to engage. But it had felt like performance art, like Alex was demonstrating his ability to be a good husband rather than actually being one. And after 2 weeks of performed attentiveness, he'd gradually faded back into his familiar pattern of polite distance. That afternoon, I called my sister Patricia. "I need to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay," she said carefully. "What's going on?" "When you and Tom came over for dinner last month, what did you think of Alex?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, how did he seem to you? Present, engaged, like himself?" Another pause, longer this time. "Sarah, why are you asking me this?" "Because I feel like I'm losing my mind. I feel like my husband has checked out of our marriage, but he's being so polite about it that I can't tell if I'm imagining things." "You're not imagining things," Patricia said quietly. The relief of hearing those words was overwhelming. "What did you notice?" "He was pleasant, cordial, like he was hosting dinner for acquaintances rather than having his family over. There was no warmth, no real engagement. It felt like he was going through the motions." "Did Tom notice?" "Tom said afterward that Alex seemed like he was somewhere else entirely. Like his body was there but his mind was completely checked out." We talked for an hour, about how Alex had changed over the past 2 years, how he'd become increasingly distant without ever doing anything overtly wrong. About how difficult it was to address a problem that consisted entirely of absence. The absence of interest, of engagement, of emotional presence. "The thing is," Patricia said, "he's not being cruel. He's not fighting with you or treating you badly. He's just not really there anymore." That was exactly it. Alex wasn't being a bad husband in any way I could point to or complain about. He was being a polite stranger who happened to live in my house and share my last name. That evening, when Alex came home from his drinks with Kevin, if he'd actually had drinks with Kevin, I decided to try one more time to reach him. "How was your evening?" I asked. "Good. Kevin's doing well. His new job is working out." "That's great. Alex, can we talk for a minute?" I saw something shift in his expression, a subtle tightening around his eyes. "Sure. What about?" "About us. About how we're doing." "We're fine," he said immediately. "Why, is something wrong?" "Fine." There was that word again, the word Alex used to describe everything in his life now, his day, our marriage, his mood, his plans for the weekend. "I don't feel like we're fine," I said. "I feel like we're strangers." Alex sat down across from me at the kitchen table, and I could see him switching into what I'd started thinking of as his handling Sarah's concerns mode. Patient, attentive, slightly patronizing. "What makes you feel that way?" he asked. "We don't talk anymore. Not really. We don't spend time together that feels meaningful. We don't connect. We talk every day," he said. "We had dinner together last weekend. We went to your book club party last month. Alex, when's the last time you told me something about your inner life? Something you were thinking about, or worried about, or excited about?" He considered this. "I don't know. I guess I don't think about things in those terms. You used to. You used to tell me about dreams you had, or articles you read that made you think, or conversations with coworkers that stuck with you. You used to share yourself with me. I still do. When? Alex, when's the last time we laughed together? Really laughed, not just polite chuckling at something on TV. When's the last time you seemed excited about anything we were doing together? Sarah, I think you're overanalyzing this. Relationships change as they mature. We're more settled now, more comfortable. That's normal. Settled, comfortable, code words for emotionally dead. Is that what this feels like to you, settled and comfortable? Yes, he said without hesitation. I think we have a good marriage. And there it was, the fundamental disconnect. Alex thought we had a good marriage because we weren't fighting, weren't having obvious problems, weren't making each other miserable in dramatic ways. But I didn't want a good marriage, I wanted a real one. Alex, do you love me? Of course I love you, he said immediately. Why would you ask that? Because I can't feel it anymore. I can see that you care about me, that you want me to be okay, that you'd be sad if something happened to me. But I can't feel that you love me. He stared at me for a long moment, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was seeing something real in his expression. Not the careful politeness he usually wore, but actual confusion. I don't know what you want me to say, he said finally. I want you to say something true, something that comes from who you actually are, not from who you think you should be as my husband. I am being myself. Are you? Because the man I married had opinions about things, got excited about ideas, wanted to share experiences with me. This version of you just exists, pleasantly, politely, but there's no passion, no curiosity, no real engagement with anything. Alex looked down at his hands. I think we just want different things. What do you want? Peace, stability, a life without drama. And what do you think I want? I don't know, more than I can give, apparently. Normal life continuing around our stalled conversation. Alex, I said finally, are you happy? He looked up at me, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I was seeing him clearly. Not the polite stranger he'd become, but the person underneath all the careful distance. I don't know, he said. I don't think about happiness much anymore. Why not? Because thinking about it makes me sad. It was the most honest thing he'd said to me in months, maybe years. What makes you sad? The feeling that I'm disappointing everyone, including myself. The feeling that I'm not who I used to be, and I don't know how to get back there. Who did you used to be? Someone who cared about things, someone who got excited about life, about possibilities, about sharing experiences with people I loved. Someone who wasn't just going through the motions. What happened to that person? I don't know. Life, I guess. Work stress, getting older, the weight of responsibilities. Somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling things as deeply, and it felt easier, safer. But lonely. Yeah, very lonely. We talked until almost midnight that night, the first real conversation we'd had in over a year. Alex told me about feeling overwhelmed by the pressure to be a good husband, a successful professional, a functioning adult. How he'd started shutting down emotionally because feeling less seemed easier than feeling too much. How he'd been going through the motions of our marriage because he didn't know how to reconnect with the person who'd actually wanted to be married. The thing is, he said, I love you, I really do. But I don't know how to love you anymore. I don't know how to be present, how to be real, how to be anything other than this polite version of myself that doesn't disappoint anyone but doesn't really connect with anyone either. It was the beginning of a long process. Alex started therapy to figure out where he'd lost himself and how to find his way back. I started therapy to understand why I'd accepted emotional abandonment for so long instead of insisting on real connection. We started couples counseling to learn how to be married to each other instead of just coexisting in the same house. Some days were better than others. Some days Alex would show up as himself, engaged, present, real, and I'd remember why I'd fallen in love with him. Other days he'd retreat back into his polite stranger routine, and I'd wonder if we were just postponing an inevitable divorce. But slowly, gradually, Alex started coming back. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in small moments of genuine connection that reminded me what our marriage had felt like before he'd checked out. 6 months later, we were having dinner at that Italian restaurant I'd suggested the night of our big conversation. Alex was telling me about a book he'd read, getting animated about the ideas it had sparked, asking what I thought about the author's arguments. It felt like talking to my husband again. Not the polite stranger who'd been living in our house, but the man I'd actually married. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For coming back." Alex reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you for not giving up on me when I was gone." We still have hard days when Alex retreats into his protective shell of emotional distance, when I have to remind myself that healing isn't linear, that learning to be present after years of checking out takes practice. But we also have real days when we laugh together, when Alex shares something that matters to him, when I feel like we're actually married instead of just performing marriage for each other. The difference between a good marriage and a real one, I've learned, isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of people who are willing to show up as themselves, even when themselves is messy, imperfect, or struggling. For 2 years, I was married to someone who'd chosen safety over connection, distance over vulnerability. Now I'm married to someone who's learning to choose presence over protection, even when presence feels scary. It's not a perfect marriage, but it's a real one. And after 2 years of living with a ghost, real feels like a miracle.
Some stories are felt, not spoken. If unsaid stories moved you even a little, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Your support helps these unsaid stories find their voice.